This is Ken with VOD TV. We're at the 2013 Broadband Community Summit. We're with Galen Updike. Galen's with the state of Arizona in broadband development, but you're also now the past president of the RTC. Right. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what the RTC is up to?
Sure, thank you. This particular event here at Broadband Communities is one of the signature events for RTC that we've had. It's been a culmination of 3 or 4 years of effort. And we chose our theme this year after very careful consideration amongst our board to be about collaboration. And our impact, our desired impact, was to instill and inspire local and regional rural members of our organization, give them some tools whereby they could go out and collaborate for adoption in addition to collaborate for new technology and new infrastructure in their areas. Collaboration is so important, and it's the old supply-demand cycle. If you don't have the supply, you're not going to get anywhere. Prices will be high, and if you don't have the demand, you'll never attract supply. So it's a vicious circle, and you have to break that circle, and it's especially hard in rural America because they don't have, it just doesn't bear out the current ROI, return on investment, formulas that the telcos use and the providers use just don't play well in rural America. So if they have money to spend, they're going to spend it with the best ROI, and that changes from time to time, but the rural areas are always below that threshold, it seems. So we've decided in our processes that there's a need. 1/5 of America is basically in suburbia or in rural America, and we have about 25 to 30 million people in rural America that don't have broadband at all. And then you go from there to underserved, and then you have, in some areas, you actually have some good things happening. So what we have done is we've said that we need our people to understand that the feds are not going to come and help anymore. There's no more money. Yeah. We all know that. And so there's a lot of self-help that's needed. And we're teaching our rural regions to, in fact, help themselves. And they have to, on an individual basis, they have to form committees. They have to make those committees regional in nature. They have to consolidate and aggregate their demand, and they have to act together in the delivery of that demand to the right supplier and say, these are the terms by which you'll get these customer base, and rather than divide and conquer.
Yeah, I think I just had an epiphany, and I've kind of known this, but I think it just really crystallized. And these small towns, you're right, the investments aren't made necessarily by the bigger providers, and part of that is they just don't have the feet on the street, right? They're not local, and I think that's what you're advocating. We've heard Blair Levin advocate that it's got to come almost grassroots. It's got to come from the local to get to that next level of broadband connectivity in these small areas.
And so what we have, our first session tomorrow morning will be on community aggregation and community collaboration for funding. And we will tell 4 different stories as to how communities came together, one of them being a federal grant, and the other 3 being grassroots collaboration. And in one instance, the people locally voted to tax themselves. Another instance, they got the local businessman, the hardware store guy and the Chevy dealership and the other guy, they came together and they raised some money. Right. And they created a pot of money that they grew and leveraged. And then the last instance is where a group of companies got together in a region in southern Illinois, and they created their own demand aggregation and then went after a telco. The first 3 instances, in the middle 2, the first instance they used a telco, an existing telco. Second and third, these people created their own telco. Or their own provider. I say telco and I mean provider.
Sure. Yeah. No, I know.
So So it's but these are grassroots stories that are inspiring, and we're giving this, as Rochelle Chong used to say, what's the secret sauce of broadband deployment? Mm-hmm. And we're giving that secret sauce today to make it happen.
Well, the thing is, it sounds like there is no one sauce, though. There's all kinds of little ingredients that can go into it. Right?
Yeah, and down in the Southwest, you got this, this great Mexican flavor that you got to deal with, and right. So we're great on Mexican food down there, and so we have our own needs, and so there's a couple of other things that as we go along, and people don't understand this. I spent 2 years waiting for a major provider in Arizona against their return on investment best interests, their self-interest, and nobody would have blamed them for, in fact, you couldn't blame them for not doing what they were being asked to do. But for a long, long time, there was a section in Arizona that did not have adequate what we call backhaul or middle mile. And there was a 35-mile stretch between Flagstaff and Winslow that was unassigned territory as far as the Arizona Corporation Commission and the FCC was concerned. It was no man's land.
And this was actually was this on the interstate too?
It was on the interstate. And so there was no fiber across that. It was a difficult engineering feat to build fiber, and there was no return on investment for the other end, the non-Flagstaff end, the Winslow end. Mm-hmm. And so we didn't have backhaul then because of that into our major Tier 1 sites in Phoenix. And everything has to have backhaul to Tier 1 site in order to have the internet work in your area. And all of these people in the White Mountains of Arizona, and there's 1 million people that live in the larger area, or 800,000 like that, in the larger area being impacted, their city councils could vote until they were blue in the face. And they were 200 miles away from where the problem was. And it was a private sector decision. And finally, bless their hearts, Quest came through and built and spent $7 million to build this fiber connection. It took them 3 years to get the permitting from both the state of Arizona and the federal government to do it.
Wow.
And that's the other problem.
Yeah.
We have to come together and figure out how to get rid of these barriers that are placed by either local government, state government, or federal government, who in their self-interest or for some reason from the past, they don't understand how important right-of-way is and permitting processes are in this whole process. We got to get them on the same side of the desk with the providers, and it has to be automatic. And so we're doing a couple things in Arizona that I'm very proud of.
Okay.
We passed a law last year called the Digital Arizona Act. And what we did was basically redefine the word transportation corridor, a highway, a state highway, to include that it transports information. So we harked back to a 1780 rule by the U.S. government where the first roads that were in the rural areas of the country were postal roads. Well, what's a postal road? It's a place for a mail carrier to have easy access and transport from point A to point B. And as a result, you transport information more quickly. Well, guess what? We need to have that same foresight that our forefathers had in this country and build these communication line roads and have these easements all ready to go in advance of the needs that are that will help meet the demand.
I imagine that eased the permitting process and so forth.
Absolutely. Now these providers are coming to Arizona because of the law change. And they're saying, gee, my permitting process is going to be cut in half. Our state transportation department is now sitting on the same side of the desk. Before, you had to, the use of transportation corridor was the last resort. Telcos had to provide information that said they had exhausted every other avenue before transportation department would talk to them. Now that's worst case type things, but that was the story we were getting from the providers and also from the transportation department. We changed the law. Now they sit on the same side of the desk. and they say, you know what, the people of Arizona want their right-of-way to be used for communication corridors. Okay, that's an easy concept. So now the easement process and some of the other processes, we're trying to help out. And there's, right-of-way has its own issues, including the original right-of-way. The original right-of-way may have been restricted, for example. There may have been issues where the owner of the right-of-way and the selling of it said, this is a one-purpose right-of-way. You can only use it for roads. Now you have to go back and understand all of that on a case-by-case basis. And so we need to analyze those, and we're doing that right now at the state. But we're seeing benefits. We have companies lining up now to come into Arizona and, in matter of fact, make the investments for fiber that we need for the backhaul purposes so that our rural folks can be connected easily and quickly with good capacity back into our Tier 1 sites of Phoenix and Tucson.
And that makes sense, and it's really about not necessarily government putting in any money, but maybe just removing barriers sometimes.
Removing barriers, and also using resources that are owned by the taxpayer that are now part of the investment. So if you could eliminate 30 to 40% of your lawyer activity, just think at, say, $400 an hour for a lawyer to do this, how many $29 a month payments by individual users have to go into those hundreds and hundreds of hours necessary at $500 an hour, $400 an hour to get a permit.
Yeah, and this is validated too by Google's. A big part of why they went to Kansas City was because of the way Kansas City would work with them, and I think it's borne out by their progress.
And that is exactly right. So now, at some point, there's diminishing returns, and the pioneers and the first adopters are going to get the best benefits, and eventually, those towns that don't, or those communities that don't adopt, they're going to never catch up. And so we'll see over the next 5 years, people don't leave the rural areas because there is a quality of life issue. And we're seeing the adoption by the younger generations of iPads, of smartphones, and the apps that go along with them, and the culture. You're not cool, you're not hip. Those are 70s terms, unless you have these accoutrements. And as a result, I think we're going to see the impact if kids don't have access to the internet for their education, for their social life, for their communications. They will not, in fact, stay in areas that doesn't provide these. And as a result, there'll be one more impetus for them to leave rural America. We have to be very, very careful, and because we don't need any more ghost towns.
It'll be kind of like the ghost towns that you see where the interstate bypass the towns, right?
Right, and that's a problem. So as a result, I spend most of my time figuring out how we can make life in rural America, rural Arizona, palatable and bring them into the information age. And once they get there in the information age, I've got some of the most beautiful places in the entire world where people who have means, where people who have good connectivity can come and work in the worldwide economy. And I'm going to retire there as soon as I get the highest speed possible to my area that I want to retire to. But and that's with the lifestyle that people are looking for. I mean, there is nothing better than sitting at 6,500 feet with pine trees all around you and clean, fresh air and an ambient lifestyle and good neighbors and making your way through life and satisfying the economy for your family and so forth.
And to be connected.
And to be connected. And that's what it is. You have to be connected. If you're not connected, you're not going to have the opportunities.
Well, Galen, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.